Alhamdulillah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Akibatun lil mustaqim. La ilaha illahu hayyun qayyum atubu ilayh. Innahu rabbi yuhibbul mu'min ladhi yusalli wa ibadatuhu wa salawatuhu min mukhlisin. Muhammadun Sayyidina Mahbubana innahu kana rasulan nabiyyan salawatu Allah ta'ala wa salamuhu alayhi. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuh lil ikwani wa akhwati fi din wa salamu ala mani taba huda lil ikwani wa akhwati fi Afrika wa Europa, Asia wa America wa kuli makan. Halan salam bikum. Thank you, my brothers and sisters who will show up in the near future. Assalamu alaikum, my dear brother, Saeed. And we are in a process now of the Aqeedah, which is extremely important. All of the Aqeedah is. But here, Subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to confirm with his believers that his legislation and his legislation alone is that he is the one and only who legislates. He wants to make sure that the movement believes this and understands this. And it's not from the guise of man, but from his legislation. And so this is a critical part, because the Muslim Ummah is in a conflict because it's been dragged away from the Sharia law. And we've been adding to, not to the Sharia, taking from the Sharia and going to the guise of the concepts of the Tubab governments and so forth and so on. And this is taking hold even in Muslim states. So Subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to make sure that for those who really truly believe, that they put in their heart his Sharia and the Sharia of his Rasul, alayhi salatu salam. And this is why this chapter here is very important, because he wants, because Subhanahu wa ta'ala and our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam want to hit home that the legislation is in the hands of Subhanahu wa ta'ala. This legislation was handed down to all prophets. So I want us to understand that in order for you to be a true believer, you must have this concept in your heart that the legislation rests with Subhanahu wa ta'ala only. You must have this reservation. You must put this concept in your heart, and not only have it in the heart, but actually practice it, implement it, and enforce it, as you always hear me say, those three elements. So let's get started. One of the concepts that I have to talk about today is because there's a dangerous precedent being set by Muslim groups. And you remember I have been harping about the Islamic groups, the Jama'at Islamiyya in Arabic. And you remember our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said that there will be 73, and 72 will be going to the hellfire. And that's why we have to be very careful when we join the Islamic groups, because you want to make sure that they're following the one that the Prophet ﷺ has said that you follow, and you follow his way. So here we start off by, none of us can understand Subhanahu wa ta'ala and what his demand is from until we understand his Sharia, his legislation. And that we learn from our Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. So this is a critical point here, because I'm going to get into something here, because I want the brothers, especially the United States, because they're falling in this matter of fact, I heard somebody talk this other days ago in reference to this particular group, and they've adopted, and he's African American, and he's adopted this concept, and this concept is flawed. We as Muslims cannot have any part of the understanding of subhanahu wa ta'ala without understanding and having the Sharia as the basis of our life. Sharia Islamiyah. You cannot understand him. If you walk away from the Sharia, you are not in any parts of understanding of what our Prophet ﷺ was demanding upon us. You cannot. So we must learn from our Prophet ﷺ about subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we cannot describe subhanahu wa ta'ala either by using metaphysics. Now, I saw a brother the other day using metaphysics to describe many aspects of Islam. This is an innovation, and this is bid'ah, and it's dangerous because there were groups in the past who used this to describe subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they put emphasis that was outside of what the box. And you got to remember something about Islam, my brothers and sisters. We Muslims are ordered to think within the box of Islam, not outside of it. Because when we're inside the box, we know that we have what's in front of us is subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then we have our Prophet ﷺ and his sunnah. We have this. And so our thought process, remember, like I talked about the last time on this subject, about the logic and reasoning, okay? And this is, again, logical, and the reasoning is behind it, because inside that box is where subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving his instructions. When you jump outside the box with metaphysics and cerebral thinking and so forth and so on to understand and try to describe subhanahu wa ta'ala, you get in trouble. So, and we have one group, the Asharis. Now, there's a brother in New Jersey who's a imam of a masjid who pushes this. And it's a deviant Aqidah, my brothers and sisters. Stay away from it. Because they use metaphysics and other thought processes in their Aqidah to describe subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we there's another topic on this called Kalamu, the words of subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is a deep subject, very deep. And they tried to describe this, and they were defeated by many of the Sheikh Islams for many centuries. But this process has now come back up again, especially among African Americans who have picked up on this particular Aqidah, and it's dangerous. It'll take you out of the fold of Islam. And you must be very careful with these people. Be very careful in their Aqidah. You should read on them, because the deviant Islamic groups, you should read about them. The Khawarij, okay, the people like this. There's other groups too. There's the Morji. Remember, I told you about the Morji is one. Morjia is the group itself. There's many of these groups that are now starting to take off in the Muslim community. The Qur'aniyun, who say that they believe in subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they don't believe in anything that the Prophet ﷺ has said or his hadiths. See, we have these dangerous groups, and they're making headway among the Muslims today. So let's look at this again, this group, how they deviated. They deviated tremendously. And they don't think inside the box, the Islamic box, okay? Inside the box of Islam is subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet. Subhanahu wa ta'ala said, you describe me in this manner and from what you learn from your Prophet. And so here we go at this. Subhanahu wa ta'ala you cannot really describe him unless you know the Quran. That's the first condition, because in there he describes himself. You say, yeah, I don't remember reading anything like that. Subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't say anything. Yeah, well, you go and look at the Qul Ahad. You look at that particular, at the end there, look at that particular surah. He describes what he is. This is the best description of him. And this particular surah, near the last, and he described himself in that. And so that gives you indication, again, why you have to think inside the box, the Islamic box, and use the logic and reasoning that Islam says that you use in order to decipher subhanahu wa ta'ala, what he wants, his sharia, his sunnah and his sharia, and the sunnah and the sharia of our prophet, alayhi salatu salam. This is important. Assalamu alaikum, my dear brother. How you doing? Knowledge, how you doing, my dear brother? So we have to think in that regard, like that. So one of the ways you will understand subhanahu wa ta'ala, and none of us can fully understand him, but these are the things I'm giving you that's inside the Islamic box that we're supposed to be thinking, and not think as the Ash'aris, as they do. They go outside and they use metaphysics and everything else. Stay away from it. It's a deviant Aqidah. It will take you out of the fold of Islam. The second part is the hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ in his talking about subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the other reason, that's the second condition that you can understand subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, it's in the framework of the Islamic box, inside of it. Third, here is very important. This is why I've harped on this a lot. The other way you can understand subhanahu wa ta'ala is by the 99 names that our prophet ﷺ has taught us, which describes subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you think inside the box, again, you see the Quran, you see the description of subhanahu wa ta'ala. He describes himself. He talks to you in the book on what he wants from you. You go through the chapters, the surahs of the Quran. Subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you what he wants. He's telling you that his sultan, his power is in the heaven. He governs the heavens and the earths. And again, he doesn't use metaphysics. And anyone is using metaphysics, well, we have a lot of African Americans are now caught up into this kufr. They're going using the stars, they're using the mood, they're using the wind, they're using all types of thought process in order to describe Islam, the prophet, the subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's deviant. Stay away from it. So again, the most important thing we have to understand is that the Muslim who's truly looking to strengthen himself, you have to get your Aqidah down. You have to, in order for you to have this pledge, this covenant with subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to stay inside the Islamic box. Don't deviate from it. And governance and how you treat one another, or if you come into power, your legislation, all of these things like this, how you deal with the enemy, is inside the box. And where do you go to solve those problems? You go to subhanahu wa ta'ala and to his messenger, alayhi salatu salam. Again, see, you stay in that framework, and that you know that the legislation rests with subhanahu wa ta'ala only. This is, again, inside the framework of the Islamic framework. So, again, please, my brothers and sisters, you go do your research on, stay away from this Ash'ari, these people here. There are many of them now. Stay away from their fikr. Don't get caught up in trying to understand subhanahu wa ta'ala by using the cosmos, or try to use some number system, or try to use your rationale, or try to use some philosopher, a Tubab philosopher from the 15th, 16th century. It doesn't work. Subhanahu wa ta'ala is against that. He did not order anybody to think of him in this manner. I gave you the processes here. You want to understand subhanahu wa ta'ala better, you understand the Quran. And in there, his demands of you. That's how you understand. Secondly, again, you go by the hadiths of our Prophet, what he has said. That's the second condition. The third condition is the 99 names. Those things describe subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it is in his pleasure. The Ash'aris, I forgot this group, was fought by our dear Sheikh Islam, Ibn Taymiyyah. I can't think of them, the names right now. But stay away from all these deviant groups. Stay away from them. Now, we go to, again, the legislation. This legislation in Islam is important. As I harped the last time, especially the African Americans in the United States, the legislation is important because the legislation is what has helped to kill off our population for 400 years. The legislation there, the logic and reasoning behind it, as I said before, is perverse. It's perverse. And the legislation is a worldly legislation. And this legislation is spread through the world. This is why we have turmoil. So we have to believe one of the conditions here. We have to believe, as I said, that the Sharia law is the best governance. You have to believe that, my brothers and sisters. If you believe that the French government has better legislation than subhanahu wa ta'ala is handed down, then you are a disbeliever. If you believe that the American government and its governance and its legislation is better than the Sharia Islamiyah, you have disapostated out. You cannot. They're flawed. And if all you have to do is look at it, you see what's happened inside the United States, how you have all these thousands and thousands of laws and regulations, yet they manage to kill and discriminate inside of it. They manage to allow homosexuality. They manage to allow fornication. They now even allowing you to even have marijuana in many of the states. So how is it they're protecting the soil, and yet they're allowing all these vices that every prophet talked against? This is why I say the logic and reasoning in these worldly governments is perverse. Now, secondly, the ta'at. Remember our pledge going towards the what our prophets have said, and not against like the Roman Empire and so forth and so on. We have to have our obeyances, and we have to make that obeyance on that Sharia. We must make obeyances on that. If you're sitting in LA or you're sitting here in Fez, Morocco, you must make that obeyance, my brothers and sisters. That's important. Please, you have to understand that. Even if you can't practice all of it, that's not the point behind it. It's what you have here in the heart and what you try to implement, what you implement with your families, what you implement with the other Muslims, and handling and dealing with the disbelievers, the mushrikeen, the Zindiqeen. I mean, there's all kinds of different names. Subhanahu wa ta'ala is named those who do not believe. So you must maintain this ta'at. You heard me say this many times. Ta'at is pledging. You pledge. Just like when you give your shahadatain, it's a ta'at in Arabic. It's so advanced. It's giving sema ta'a. Yes, I listen and obey. That's what I just said in Arabic. But the ta'at is a very important aspect in Islam. Every Muslim must make ta'at. They have to. You don't make ta'at, I don't know what kind of Muslim you are. You have to have a ta'at, again, and obeyances on subhanahu wa ta'ala and on our prophet. And then on the Sharia and the Sunnah, you must have that ta'at. You cannot be Muslim doing other than that. Oh, let me say hi here. Oh, assalamu alaikum, my dear brother King. How you doing, my dear brother? So now we look at number 3 here. Number 3 is the which is very important here. You know, the last couple of weeks I've been talking about our two sister religions, Judaism and Christianity, because it's an important part and lessons for the Muslims that don't fall into their traps. Here, number 3, we have the rejection, the Muslim rejection, we have the Jewish rejection, and we have the Christian rejection of the Sharia Allah Ta'ala. And you say, Yahya, I don't know what you're talking about. You look at the Israeli government, they do not govern by the Torah per se. They do some aspects they reject. The Christians, do they use the Torah inside the United States or in France or Spain? No, they don't. Do they govern by that? No, they don't. They govern by their own whims. They made up their own constitutions outside of their prophets that they say that they love and revere. And the Muslims say that they love subhanahu wa ta'ala. And many, even the leaders will say they have ta'at on subhanahu wa ta'ala. But yet their legislation is 1% Sharia Islamiyah. The rest of it is the American governance or the French governance or the Spanish or the Russian governance. And this is a big problem. And subhanahu wa ta'ala has talked in the Quran about this. And he gave proof on what he did and what he wanted from each one of the groups. The Muslims, he wanted from the Jews and from the Christians. And and we are failing it. The Jews and Christians have already failed that. The Muslims are now failing it as a general rule. And it's very serious because when you go at a legislation and you put on the Tubab government's legislation on a Muslim, you kill him. You kill him. And we see you kill the population, period. Like the divorce laws inside the United States, how one man, he's financially solvent one day, he goes into the family court the next day, his wife has now just inherited all his wealth. And many times we see the man thrown out on the damn street, and she has just now been enriched. This is why I'm saying how crazy the laws are, especially in the United States. They are perverse. So again, the Muslim cannot reject the Sharia Allah. He must make ta'at on the Sharia. And we have examples of where subhanahu wa ta'ala has chastised the Christians and Jews for their mishandling of the sunnah of their prophets, Isa alayhi salatu wasalam and Moses alayhi salatu wasalam. They don't follow them. And anybody who says that the Israeli government follows the Torah, I'm going to laugh at you. You better bring your proof. They don't. They have a democratic, quote unquote, legislation. Yes, they practice Hanukkah and some of the other things like this, but their legislation is not based on the Torah. It's secular, in other words. Okay, and the Christians as well, they're secular, and their governance is secular. This is not the governance of Moses alayhi salatu wasalam. This is not the governance of Jesus or Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. It is not. So now let's look at something. The first proof we have of this is subhanahu wa ta'ala has got on basically here. This is Surah 2 and verses is 85. I'll read this in English for us. After this, yea, the same people who slay among themselves and banish a party of you from their homes, assist their enemies against them in guilt and transgression. And if they come to you as captives, you ransom them, though it was not lawful for you to banish them. Interesting. Then it is only part of the book that you believe in. And do you reject the rest? Now, remember, I've been here last couple of weeks, I've been talking about the same thing. Jews, Christians, and now even Muslims take only what they want out of the book of the Quran, only what they want out of the Torah, and only what they want of the Injil, the Sunnah of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, and then they reject the rest of it. And so the rule is among the Muslims, I don't know. I'm not going to say about the Jews, but I believe they have the same. If I'm trying to remember when I had the Sharia class, if you reject any part of the Quran, it's the rejection of it all. If you say you like 50% of the surahs, but then you reject the others, you are a disbeliever. You cannot take part here and then and reject the other. You cannot. Muslims cannot do this. So here we have something where subhanahu wa ta'ala again is chastising the Jews, okay, and telling them what what you've done to pervert his books. When they made the Jews made the Talmud, this is man-made. They made it in their desires. That angered subhanahu wa ta'ala tremendously. It angered him tremendously because he already gave the laws from Moses, alayhi salatu wasalam. That's why Moses was the lawgiver. Each of the prophets have his own nickname, so to speak. And Moses was like the lawgiver. And so he handed down that law. But they perverted that law. So this is Baqarah, this is Surah 2 and verse 87 is the first proofs about the rejection of the books of subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Torah, the Injil. Again, the Injil is Arabic for the Sunnah of Jesus, alayhi salatu wasalam, and then we have our book, the Quran, and we have our Sharia, Allah Ta'ala. So we have the first proof in that. Now, we have to also understand something else, because today we have a conflict. And when I say this, I'm not meaning this in a racist tone when I say this. But we have many, especially two-bob governments and their leaders believing that they are all knowing, all encompassing, that they have control of this what's in front of them, what has been in the past, and what is in the future. They really actually believe this, because when you listen to them talk, they talk in this sense as though they do not ask subhanahu wa ta'ala for his permission. And they ordain themselves and saying, well, 6 weeks from now, I'm going to do this. 7 weeks from now, I'm going to do that. And they don't know if perhaps this is something that is not part of the Sharia law, but they believe themselves to be powerful, very powerful. So we have to be very careful of that and be mindful of that. And you stay away from all arrogance, because none of the prophets preached that. Isa alayhi salatu wasalam was not an arrogant man, nor was our prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. He was not. Nor was Solomon, nor was David alayhi salatu wasalam jami'an. They were not this arrogant. They always put subhanahu wa ta'ala, when they talk about the future or something, they ask that they will be part of something. They didn't say for certain, like you hear these presidents today in the two-bob world. They talk and as though they control everything. It's not true. The only person who has this ability is subhanahu wa ta'ala. He knows what we're thinking. He knows what's in front of us. He knows what happened in the past, and he can detail that. And he also has the power for the future. Only he has the right for legislation, my brothers and sisters. Only he has this power, not the two-bob governments and their presidents. No, not the Muslim leaders and their presidents and prime ministers. They don't have this. None of us have that. That's important, my brothers and sisters. That's very important. Now, none of us have that complete understanding about subhanahu wa ta'ala and what he wants. Yes, we have the Quran. Okay, we have the Quran and we have the Sunnah and we have the 99 names. But even that, we're still missing many parts. And so we have to understand that and be mindful of that. Now, next, these people who uh, who demand now the concept, the worldly concept, the secular governance, and how they treat people. This, again, is a direct affront to the Sharia. It's a direct affront to all of the prophets, because subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the prophets instructions. They're not following that. They're following their own guise and whims. And this is why, again, the world is in trouble. Now, subhanahu wa ta'ala told us that he will punish these people who's doing this. And my brothers and sisters, you have to be mindful of this. Do you see you live in the United States? You see what's going on there? I mean, this wicked tornado. You have flooding. You have weird weather, bugs. You have, just ruthless killings. You have the crime rate is gone up. You have perverse sexual desires. You have all of this disease. All of this is going on through there. And subhanahu wa ta'ala is not blessing that land. As Malcolm said way back in the 60s, before he passed, he said the Americans and their military cannot win a ground war anymore. How right was our brother, our ancestral brother? Ground war meaning where you go man to man and you fight your man. That's over. Now the Americans win their battles from the sky and from 100 kilometers and all that by shooting bombs and rockets and super guided madness missiles from the sky and so forth and so on. That's how they win the battles. They're not winning battles anymore going hand to hand, man up against another brother. They're not doing that. They cannot do that. And Malcolm was right in what he said, that they can't win a ground war anymore. They have to use this. But as one famous scholar who's now dead, Rahimahullah, said, that this is something's going to happen. As I explained to you, that these satellites that they use to help to guide these missiles is going to falter one of these days. And there's a lot of people have a lot of talking about this. And I'll give you one of the things they said. And these are secular people. These are not Muslims. I'm just giving you what I hear them say. They say that the aliens, okay, the space, we call them jinn, but the aliens of the space who are, travel through space and so forth and so on, is going to knock out these satellites. We know there's weird things happening on the earth as we speak today. We see spottings of different things. I seen here a couple of years ago, now it just surfaced, that the Navy was underground when it was being followed by ships. By spacecraft. And the spacecraft actually went past them as they surfaced up to get away from him, passed them up in the air and went by them. This is what they reported. So we have weird occurrences. But the Muslims believe that this concept of the satellites and all these guided missiles and airplanes is going to come down. And we'll go back to hand fighting. Because why? The Prophet ﷺ said that in his hadith, that it was be a bloody war between the Muslims and the Christians. They will have this bloody war. And it's going to be man to man, man up. This is going to happen. So, we look at that in this sense that subhanahu wa ta'ala, in his wisdom, has given us something. And we should go with that and put it in our heart, Muslims. You must do this. You must put his Sharia. You must put his Sunnah in your heart and practice it. Implement it, even in your homes with your family, the best you can. And then dealing with the adversaries. You must do that. Now, the killing of the Aqeedah of the Muslims. This is important. Let me tell you something I heard the other day. This was sad. I don't know if you notice this now. Many of the scholars who start to use, like doing that right now, talk about the Aqeedah, they're not allowed in many Catholic countries anymore. They're not allowed because why? The disbelieving governments do not want the Muslim to understand his Aqeedah. The minute the scholars get into the Aqeedah to believe to strengthen you, they call this terrorism. They call this extremism. And so they stop the visas. And many of these scholars, especially the one on TV, he's a peaceful scholar. And he's been to Britain, Ireland, France, United States, Canada, and so on and so on. But now he's been barred. He said after he started a Aqeedah class, then it was it. They just said, no, you're now perverse. You're bringing this to the Muslims. I can't have that. So they stopped the visas for many of these scholars like this. And it's a shame. Now, that the Muslims and others are believing that the worldly secular government is the best governance. You say, Yahya, how you say that? Look at what happens when you see interviews. Muslim leaders, you see Kafir leaders, they all say democratic process. I'm trying to implement that. This is how we're going to do this. This is how we're going to do that. Everything is under democratic. And the Muslim leaders, you don't hear them say anything about the Sharia. You don't hear anything about Subhanahu wa ta'ala and his law. This is very sad, and it's happening a lot. Now, the Muslims, the Jews and Christians, again, are ordered to have obeyances on the Sharia of their prophets. That, again, we have to go back to that. You Muslims, you must have that ta'at. The Jews and Christians, you must have that ta'at. But the Muslims in general are still better at the ta'at on the Sharia Allah and the Sharia of our prophet than the Jews and the Christians. They've just basically thrown theirs aside. The Muslims are still, we have many still practicing it, and still many who are implementing it the best way they can. So we're still ahead of the ball game, so to speak. My brother says here, King, the two, I think they're Jesus, and they made Jesus a Roman god. Yes, this is true, my dear brother. That's true. Assalamu alaikum, my brother K. Rabba. How you doing? Now, what other proof do we have here? We have Surah Nahil. Surah Nahil, that's here. That's the B. And I think that's Surah, 17? I can't remember. The numbers of the surahs, I don't, Surah is 16, 16. Hayat 103, 103. I got to bring up this point. It's not necessarily, it is about the Aqeedah in a sense, but I want you guys to look at this to understand something with Subhanahu wa ta'ala, what he says about something. Again, this is Surah 16, Nahil, the B in English, and the verse is 103. This is a very interesting verse, and it goes kind of to our Aqeedah, if you understand the history behind this particular, the tafsir behind it. Subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we know indeed that they say it is a man that teaches him. The tongue of him they wickedly point to notable foreign, while this Arabic, pure and clear. This is what Subhanahu wa ta'ala has said about the Arabic language. Pure and clear. And any of us here have learned the Arabic language can attest to this. It is very melodic, especially Quranic or Arabian. It is very melodic. So here in this story here, the kuffar, the disbelievers, believed that some man who couldn't speak Arabic taught the prophet, our prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. And Subhanahu wa ta'ala was refuting the pagan Arabs for saying this. It's not true that this man who could not speak any Arabic at all was teaching our prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, and he was one of the authors of the Quran. Now, how can he be author of the Quran when it's written in Arabic? It was never written in English until modern times. It wasn't written in Latin or German or Russian. It was written in Quranic or Arabian, right? Subhanahu wa ta'ala has said many times in there that this language here is for those who know. You think about what he said. It's for those who know. Now, my brothers and sisters, think about this with Subhanahu wa ta'ala, what he feels about the Arabic language. It's for those who know. That's one is Surah 43, the first verse, I believe it is, where Subhanahu, or the second verse, I'm trying to remember now, I think it's the second verse, where Subhanahu wa ta'ala says in there about Arabic. So, if you are a man of knowledge in Islam, can you be a man of knowledge only speaking German? No. Or speaking Latin? No, you cannot. You cannot attain what Subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying until you have done what? Learn the Quranic Arabic. This is a factor, my brothers and sisters. Here, he's pointing this out again in this case where the pagan Arabs tried to say that this young man who was a hand, he was a servant of some sort, and that he taught the Prophet ﷺ. It's not true. It didn't happen. Subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you here it didn't happen, because this man, you hear what he said. He was speaking basically a foreign tongue, meaning he was not speaking Arabic. So how can he help write the Quran, my brothers and sisters, when he didn't speak Arabic? And the Arabic, the Quran was revealed in what? In Arabic, you see? So I wanted to bring that point up to you to show you something, how silly and how devious the enemies will go to discredit the Quran and our Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims. Now, and my brothers and sisters, as you see today, when two Muslims argue countries and debate, what do they normally do? Do they go to our brilliant scholars? No, they don't. They always run where? To the two-bob governments. That's what they do. They have them to mediate. Not Subhanahu wa ta'ala, who orders them. He says that you use his legislation and that of the Prophet when there's disputes between the brothers, Islamic brothers. They don't do that. They go and run to the UN, or they run to the Americans or the British or the French. This is what they do nowadays to solve a problem between two Muslim brothers, presidents, and this is outside of the box of Islam. It's wrong. Okay, and this is why we have turmoil in our countries. We have a lot of turmoil, and we have to be very careful of that. So they run to that. They run to to get a different worldly view and answer on an Islamic problem, especially inside a Muslim state. You have Islamic problems. The Tubab cannot solve that because he is not Muslim. I'm talking about the president, and I'm talking about the kafir. I'm talking about him, I'm not talking about the Tubab Muslim. I'm talking about the Tubab who is a disbeliever. They cannot solve the Islamic problems. They can only add to the problems, which we see that they're doing in most Muslim states. They're not supplementing those states. They're destroying those states by proxy wars, putting one group against another. This is what they're doing. And they've been doing this successfully for so long. Now, this action that is being transported today, when a ruler runs to a disbeliever, especially a Muslim, he's not apostated himself out. I'm not going to say that, but he has run himself afoul of Subhanahu wa ta'ala, because he doesn't like that. He does not want that. He doesn't want you to do this as a Muslim. If I have a problem with Saeed, me and Saeed should talk about it. We should go to another Muslim to solve the problem. We should not run to a disbeliever to solve a problem, because he cannot. He cannot do it. This is why, again, my brothers and sisters, we have to be very careful on one thing too. When we join the disbelievers and their programs, we got to be very mindful of these programs and be very careful of them, because those programs are primarily mushrikeen. Now, I'm not talking about animal rights, where you get $5 or $10 and they help animals to give animal surgery, to give them food and nourishment. That is beautiful. Nothing wrong with that. You give that money to them and so forth. But when you join a chapter where now you have signed off on a chapter or something, and then you look and see how they're getting their money. And when you see riba is behind it, you cannot be no part of that as a Muslim. It is forbidden. It's a deadly sin. It's a send you to the fire. If the group is having any sort dealing with riba, you cannot be part of it. You cannot. If you sign on to be part of the group, if this group who's using riba turns around and says, okay, I'm looking for donations to help Ghana, in the villages and so forth to bring water, that's another matter. But when you go on to join the group and that group has a banking system they're using, it's riba, it's worldly. They have credit cards, it's worldly, meaning it's full of riba. You cannot be part of that. You just cannot. This is part of the Sharia. Because again, if you look at Surah 4, verse 141, Subhanahu wa ta'ala again says he will not allow the disbelievers' way to be put on the Muslims. And when? This is their way. This is the worldly way, is riba. Riba is a killer. You know that. The interest. How many Americans, they miss one payment, two payments. The interest rate is so high that now he's tripled his payment. Instead of him paying $1,000, now he has to pay $3,000. This is what I'm talking about. You should be no part of that. And speaking of that, I know someone say, well, how about the banking? The banking is different. You're living in the Western countries. You want to protect your money. So you put it in an interest-free banking account. You can do that because you have no other choice. You live there in Los Angeles or Dallas or something like this. You have no other choice. But if you go get a loan to finance a car based upon riba, you have just made a deadly sin. Or you went to go purchase a house based upon this riba. It's a deadly sin. You cannot do that. So you should understand that. But financing is a whole lot. It's a big block. It takes about 6 months to fully understand that. Even a year is difficult. The Islamic financing system is not easy, and it takes a lot of training to understand that. So now we'll go to a section here where, again, we have man believing that he is all-encompassing, as I explained to you earlier, that man feels that he is all-encompassing, when in fact he is not, because the favors from Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has been on him. And what I mean by that, one of the easiest ones that you can think about that favor from Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is the rainfall. No man on this earth has the capacity to bring rain when he wants. There's none. That favor is from Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Again, his legislation only. None of us have that power to bring down the rain or to create wind. We don't have that kind of power. We just don't have that. But we have people to think that they can. And that's why it's so dangerous. And we must be very mindful of that. Now, let's go to Surah Baqarah, which is the second surah, and it's the 87 is Surah 2, and the verse is 87. Again, my brother and sister, I want to give you the proof on what Subhanahu wa Ta'ala says about his legislation and how it was handed down, because this is important, because our Jewish brothers and sisters are guilty of this fact as well. Subhanahu wa Ta'ala says in 80, which is the verse 87, we gave Moses the book and followed him up with succession of messengers. That means one after the other. We gave Jesus, the son of Mary, alayhi salam, clear signs and strengthened him with the Holy Spirit. It is that whenever there comes to you a messenger with what ye yourselves desire, know, you pull up with pride, and some of you call impostors, and others you slay them. This is the history of the Jews and their relationships with their prophets. They have not been kind. And Subhanahu wa ta'ala here is telling you that. But the important part of this is that he gave legislation to these prophets, and it was handed down in succession. This gives the proof again that the Muslims, Jews, and Christians, we are brothers and sisters. Okay. Now we must follow what Subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained. This is what he says here in 87. It's important. So that gives the proofs when someone says, well, no, we follow this, we follow that. No, you follow that. And Subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, the Torah is the Muslims, the Injil, the Sunnah of Isa or Jesus, and then we have the Sunnah of our prophet. So we have those three, and this is what now, as we know, Islam, or superseded the other two, but that's another matter. I've explained this many times. But even if they did not want to come to Islam, they still should follow their prophets, which they don't do. It's unfortunate. And we look at this, and it's very, very sad. Now we're going to go also here to the Surah 5, which is the Surah 5, Surah 5, and it's verse 49. Now, remember, I was talking about the seriousness of we Muslims, how we react to one another, and how we make judgments with one another, and how our rulers are supposed to do the same. Subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this is the 5th surah, and the verse is 49. Subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and this he commands, judge thou between them by what Allah hath revealed, and follow not their vain desires, but be aware of them, lest they beguile thee from any of that teachings which Allah sent down to thee. And if they turn away, be assured that some of their crimes, it is Allah's purpose to punish them. And truly, most men are rebellious. My brothers and sisters, you think about the United States. They transgressed the laws of Moses. Okay, I mean, bottom line, they transgressed the laws of Isa alayhi salam. And Subhanahu wa ta'ala said he's going to punish those who do. And what has happened in the United States and in most of the parts of the world today, there's been a collective punishment because they have been faulty. Here, Subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving advice to our prophet, telling him, don't be swayed by vain desires. Okay, don't let others sway you away from his legislation. This is what he's talking about here in this particular verse. It's very interesting. And so, and he said that he's going to punish them. So we don't know when or if, how. We can only speculate. And I only speculate in this regard, meaning because Allah alam, I'm going to say, what's happening in the United States is a form of punishment. I believe that because it's too much. And now this thing just happened here. You have fallen buildings. You have weird weathers. You have flooding that hit all the way into New Jersey. I mean, there's just one calamity after another. And it reminds me like of Pharaoh. He was hard in his heart and everything was coming to him. He still refused. This is what I think the same thing is the American government refuses to comply with the orders of Allah. And he's punishing them for that. Malcolm said it best. He said the Americans cannot win a ground war anymore. Those punishments before the Americans could win a ground war, but they can't do it anymore. And it's true. They just cannot. And so this verse here is clear that the prophet told, Subhanahu wa ta'ala told our prophet to be very mindful of those who would try to take him out from that. And that the legislation is only for Subhanahu wa ta'ala. You go by what has been revealed. You stay with that. That's what he told the prophet, alayhi salam. That's what he said to us. We must follow that. This is an order. We as Muslims must obey that. Now, I have to also bring up another verse here, because this goes towards our faith in Al-Qaeda too. This is important, my brothers and sisters. For those modern Muslims who have 99.9% friendships with disbelievers and 0.5% with Muslims, and they prefer to have protection and relationships within the groups of the kuffar than with the Muslims. Again, the same Surah 5. Verse is 55. Subhanahu wa ta'ala says here, your real friends are no less than Allah, his messenger, and the fellowship of believers. Now, hear me good on that. Your real friends are no less than Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala, his messenger, alayhi salam, and the fellowship of believers. Those who establish regular prayers and regular charity, and they bow down humbly in worship. You see the conditions on who subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about believers. Those, he said, who establish regular prayers, regular charity, and they bow down humbly. So if you are a modern Muslim and you're not making your prayers or you charity or bowing down in humility, he's not talking to you. He's talking with others who truly believe, which we call mu'mineen. So I just gave you that, and I'm giving you thoughts because I know for some this is mundane. The Aqeedah Islamiyya is for the serious Muslim who wants to have this pledge with subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he wants to get closer to subhanahu wa ta'ala. He wants to understand his religion better. He wants to make sure that he has distinguished himself away from the others. And remember what our prophet said, there should be a healthy break between us, meaning a campfire should be separating us and disbelievers. And this Aqeedah, once you adopt it, it will come naturally. Yes, you see a man on the street, he needs help, he's Jewish. You give it to him. But we have a natural division because our Aqeedah is such. We have a natural division. We have to be very mindful of that, my brothers and sisters. Now, the tafsir of that is very pointed, I would say. Very pointed. Let me see what we have here. The King, the Quran and prayer is our rope that binds the Muslim. Our brother here, King, said it right. This is true. The Quran and our prayer is our rope that binds the Muslim. And I can add to that. It also brings us closer to subhanahu wa ta'ala, because this is the perfect time that you talk to subhanahu wa ta'ala is when you're humbling yourself in prayer, because there's no intermediaries there. It's you and him. And this is where you can talk to subhanahu wa ta'ala and you ask him and you can beg him for forgiveness and so forth and so on. We had this avenue that the others don't have because we have this medium. So we have to be very careful, and we should be proud of that as Muslims, that we have that direct sentient up there to talk to subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask him, for forgiveness or whatever the situation may be in the privacy of your prayer. That is beautiful. That is a beautiful thing for the Muslims that we have that. Now, how can we find? I will say this. I don't know how many of you have heard many disbelievers. They make cracks about Muslims in the Quran, and they'll say things like, "Well, does the Quran have answers to everything?" This is something that was asked before about with the Muslims. And so I'll tell you a story real quick here, and I'll be closing here. There's a story here about this. You know, Imam Shafi, okay, one of our father's madhabs, okay, one of the four great madhabs, Shafi. The Imam one day was walking, and a man walked up there to him, and he had a big bag. He had a bag with him. So he walked to him. He asked this very question to him. He said, "Does the Quran have all the answers?" Imam Shafi said, "Yes." So the man opened up the thing and says, well, does the Quran have an answer for this? How many loaves of bread can I make out of this wheat? Clever, huh? Very clever. What he asked the famous Imam Rahimahullah, Shafi'i. So what did Shafi'i do? Rahimahullah, he went to a baker and he asked the baker how many loaves of bread he can make from this wheat. So when he approached the man and gave him the answer, he said, will you show me in the Quran? He asked him, he said, will you show me the proof that that Subhanahu wa ta'ala answered that question? He said he did answer it. And the answer is what? Again, Surah 16, Nahya, the B, and verse 43. That's right, verse 43. This is very interesting. It's a beautiful verse. And again, this is 16, and the verse is 43. Subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and before thee also the messengers we sent were but men, to whom we granted inspiration. If ye realize this not, ask those who profess the message or knowledge. This is important, especially for African American brothers and sisters who don't like to get knowledge from anybody. They rather read a book, or they rather hear something, or they rather go to think on their own about knowledge, and their knowledge and stuff is wrong because they come up with deviant aqidas, and it's wrong. Here, Subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, if you don't have knowledge of something, in this case, Imam Shafi'i was correct. The Quran is all-knowing, because he said, if you do not have an answer, you go to those who have it. The verse is telling that. It was clever on his part how he answered that as well. You see? So again, when someone comes to you and says, well, look, I heard the Quran is this and that, and it's got all the answers. Can it give me how to perform eye surgery? You say, yeah, we can give you that. And then when you go to the doctor who performs that, and you give the answer to this guy, you say, well, will you show me in the Quran? So you show him this verse. And Subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you go to those who possess the message or the knowledge. So it's very interesting that this is how clever that was. So my brothers and sisters, I went through this here today as a warning, also as an enlightenment to you, to say, if you're a Muslim, you should say, and you must make thought on this, that the legislation rests with Subhanahu wa ta'ala only. It doesn't rest with anybody else. And those messengers, as I talked about, I think about a week ago, the messengers of Allah were given understanding of it, who passed it down to the scholars and so forth and so on, as I explained it to you. So legislation is for Subhanahu wa ta'ala. He gives us his legislation. We must abide by that legislation. We talked about this here, the knowledge. My brothers and sisters, I have to again say this to you. As a general rule in the United States, we're suffering. I'm talking about the black man who's a Muslim, because they are really, really seriously behind in knowledge. I mean, very, very well behind many others. And it's not, a lot of it's not due to it's not their own making, because it's hard. The masjids are far apart, and you don't know the scholars, the men of knowledge. Is very difficult. But those windows are closing, because now you can go to YouTube and you can have some virtual courses and so forth and so on. It's possible. So we are hurting for that. But you should seek the men of knowledge in order to understand your deen, my brothers and sisters. And I'm a stickler on this. This I see happens a lot, especially with our brothers in America. They will pick up the Quran and they will take a verse from it, and they'll live at it, meaning they will talk through the verse without even knowing the tafsir of it. or the rules governing tafsir. They don't know it, but they get the verse in the Quran and they try to ad-lib the verse without understanding the tafsir of it. This is called tarif kalam. It'll send you to the fire. This is in the Quran. Misrepresenting the words of Allah. He don't like this. He doesn't like it. And then the second part is estadal, which is what? Is the changing of the meaning. So we have two of those. Subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't like that. So we have to be very careful. And we have brothers doing that, especially in the United States. I saw some on YouTube. They come on YouTube, they'll pull out a verse and read it and then give a tafsir. And I said, what? I said, whoa, where do you get this tafsir from? I remember I gave you a story about something about 6-7 months ago. This one sister, she got a hold of me because her and her husband was having a dispute. And the brother didn't probably mean no harm, but he didn't know. He should have stayed quiet, but he didn't. He gave a verse in the Quran, and it was wrong because that verse had been abrogated and about another 10 verses ahead. He didn't know that. He almost caused a divorce between this sister and her husband. Luckily, someone told the sister about me. She got a hold of me, and she said, "Well, I got it from this person, so forth and so on." And I said, "Oh, wow! I'm glad you came to me." And I gave her the right answer. This is what I'm talking about, my brothers and sisters. Be very careful. This is the Quran is Subhanahu wa Ta'ala's book. He's protective of it. You see what has happened to the Torah and the Injil. They have perverted the books. They've added books to theirs. Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has told you in the Quran, don't pervert his words. Tarif kalam. Don't pervert the words. Estabdal. Don't maliciously change the word of Subhanahu wa Ta'ala and the meaning. Meaning you get a verse here and you change it. It'll send you to fire, even though you even though you didn't say anything bad about the verse. But you must gain the knowledge. What does Subhanahu wa Ta'ala tell you here in 43? Again, in 16, so he said, you what? You seek out those who possess what? The message and the knowledge. So before you pick up the Quran and you start to live at it and start talking about it to others, make sure you have the tafsir and make sure you understand the tafsir and make sure that this verse has not been abrogated. This is part of our Aqeedah, my brothers and sisters. You follow the instructions of Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And when you start getting deeper into the Aqeedah and you start understanding the Aqeedah more, then you'll begin to understand what I'm talking about as you start to master the Quran, which none of us can master in a lifetime. I'm telling you, the Sheikh Islam that I had a chance to meet briefly in Sudan, he explained it to me. Here he was at that time, almost 80 years old. He's always telling me how he's always finding something new. Here he was 80 years old. He's been reading the Quran and so forth. And he's been to Sheikh Islam for almost about 65, 70 years. I mean, excuse me, no, less than that. I forgot what he told me, 55. I forgot what he told me. But the meaning of here is he was still learning. So my brothers and sisters, the Quran is part of your faith. You must learn it. You must read it and implement it. This is part of our Aqeedah. You must do that. And you must follow with the orders of Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And again, my brothers and sisters, you put in your heart that the Sharia, Islamiyah, is the legislation only for us. And it's true. It's his legislation, not democratic ways of meaning, not Taoism or Shintoism or communism or any of the other isms. There's no such thing. It is Subhanahu wa Ta'ala's law. If you are a Hebrew, you're a Jew, it's the Torah. If you're a Christian, it's the Sunnah of a Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. It's not the guise of man like the U.S. Constitution or the French Constitution or the British Constitution, where they use man-made laws and whims. No, it's the Torah. It was handed down by Moses. This what you follow is Hebrew. The Injil, the Christians, you follow the Prophet Jesus, alayhi salam. And the Muslims, we follow our prophet, the seal of all the prophets, alayhi salatu wasalam, and we follow his way. So this is important to know. Again, this is part of our Aqidah that we have to get. And you know, my brothers and sisters, again, I understand this may be mundane to a lot of people. They're not going to like this. But if you are a serious Muslim and you want to know your Aqidah, and you're going to be asked of this, you're going to be asked of this in the grave, and you're going to be asked about your knowledge. They're going to have the written book, because anyone knows the hadiths of the Prophet talking about the time of death. You're going to be questioned in the grave. You're going to be questioned. And my brothers and sisters, we must be very careful in this regard, because we're going to be questioned. If you don't even know your Aqidah and you don't have no knowledge of Islam except just a little bit, what does that say about you? And what excuse are you going to use when your time is called up? What excuse are you going to use? This is why I say this is very important, my brothers and sisters, that we continue to gain knowledge until we die, because we don't know when we're going to die. So we get this knowledge, and we maintain it and enforce it. And this is important. This is part of our Aqidah. And again, the legislation rests with subhanahu wa ta'ala only. You must put that in your heart, my brothers and sisters. It rests only, not democratic ways and means. And I tell you this, one of the greatest fallacies why subhanahu wa ta'ala is angry with the world today is the separation of the worldly life and governance. The governments say today, okay, the religious part, yes, we know subhanahu wa ta'ala, okay, yes, that's his domain. But the worldly life, they control. This separation, the Muslims who do this, is disbelief. You are a stone hypocrite. It is disbelief, because you cannot separate subhanahu wa ta'ala in all three of our again, the Torah, the Injil, and the Sunnah of our Prophet, all stress the legislation of subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the legislation covers the way of life, the dunya, and the laws. Okay, both the religion is one, and the governance, because he said it's right. The governments are saying that the prophets are liars. That's why they don't want to follow them. I don't want that mentioned on my book when I pass. That's why I preach in here. You see me. I don't care if they don't give me visas here and there, because one day I'm going to die, and I want to make sure that what is written for me, that I put the legislation of subhanahu wa ta'ala as first, and I say this publicly and put it in my heart, because I don't want any confusion on or anything else about democratic ways and means, because these men are separating, and you see what has happened. I just saw a new European country now just legalized marijuana. And you have to ask the question, what are they doing when you legalize something like that? And they say, well, we only let you have a little bit, you can only grow a little bit. But you know how human beings are. They're going to look at this as an opportunity. And so you have corruption in the land because of it. What about these mafias that was running the drugs in that country? Now, since they legalize it, what's going to happen with them? You know what they're going to do. Since you're cutting out their profits, they're going to start killing. This is what I'm talking about, again, the logic and reasoning that's been done by the disbelieving governments. It's bad. It's perverse. So, my brothers and sisters, just be mindful of who you are. You are Muslim. And the Muslims believe that subhanahu wa ta'ala legislates only. You have to have that maintenance and keep that maintenance. And you must believe that in your heart. Okay, my brothers and sisters. Karaba, how you doing, my dear brother? Assalamu alaikum. There are literally manuscripts in Timbuktu that detail such procedures. Yes, talking about eye surgery and so forth and so on. Our dear brother here is tall, right? That is one of my dreams, my brothers and sisters. I want to go to Timbuktu and pull out those manuscripts. That is a wonder of the world. And one of the things I love about that is it's Black men. It's our ancestral African brothers who maintain this. It's them who achieved this great knowledge. And we had European historians, and we had Arab historians too. They came there and wrote about what happened there. And matter of fact, one of the stories I love, because I can imagine how it was when some scholars came from the Middle East at this time, and they came into Mali. They thought they were going to go there to school the brothers. They got schooled, and they sent them on to the Karawin in Morocco to get more seasoning before they come into dealing with the scholars within Timbuktu. That's how powerful they were, and their knowledge was that great. That's right, my brothers and sisters. Timbuktu is something that is one of my dreams. I want so much to go there and read, especially Ahmed Baba Sudani. You know, and I'll get ready to close because I've been long today. Ahmed Baba Sudani was one of the greatest Islamic scholars of all time. And what's interesting about that, he took the name Sudani. He incorporated that word. Now, you say, yes, it sounds Sudan. Yes, because if you understand about this word Sudan, the Arabs call the trek from Morocco, southern part of Morocco, to the southern part of Egypt, Bilad es Sudan, meaning the land of the blacks. Our brother was a nationalist in this regard. He said he was a black man, and he wanted people to know that. So he incorporated the name Sudan to mean black man. Yes, Ahmed Baba Sudani. Brothers and sisters, read on him. He is very, very, very good. You read on this black man. He was proud to be a black African. He did not mix meat about that. He took the name Sudani to designate that he was part of the land of the black people. They call Bilad as-Sudan. So I just gave you that little lesson there because he's one of my favorite scholars of all time. I just love this man. I want to go to his library and pick up his books. I want so much to go to Timbuktu to do that. It's going to be very difficult. I'm hoping someday I can go there. That's right. And we talked about that. Yes, they had to go. These Arab scholars had to go back to. They had to go to Morocco to go get seasoning before they come back to deal with the scholars there at Timbuktu. Very interesting. So my brothers and sisters, let me see what the king. The Fatiha is the question. The rest of the Quran is the answer, and the last two chapters is a summary. Yes, you got that correct, my dear brother. It essentially it is the Fatiha actually is the answer for all of the Quran, because all the elements of the Quran is mentioned in it. So it's a very, very interesting science in that, and it's very interesting. Again, when you start to learn about the Quran, it's very interesting. And Mr. Our brother here, Karaba Musa, is due to Berlin conference, the creation of the net. Yeah, okay, yeah. The two Bob governments divided up Africa like you do a cake. They divided this up, and it's funny. I was just talking to a person the other day about this. The Europeans have open borders, but the same Europeans come into Africa and tell us to keep our borders closed. They don't want us to have, the open borders where we can go to see each other, because they claim it's a national security issue. But yet, and still in Europe, they have open borders. That's what they call the EU. But we here in Africa, if we want to have open borders, they're against that, claiming it's national security. How wacky is that? Again, this is how perverse democratic ways and means and laws are. You see how crooked it is and perverse? Here they in their country, there in Europe, the two Bob governments, and they have open borders. But then they come here, France, Britain, the rest, come here and they stress to the Muslims. They stress to the black Africans and the African Arabs. They stress to them, you keep your borders closed to one another, because there's security risk. There's national security issues. That's very interesting. They're telling me I'm supposed to be afraid of another black man, or I'm supposed to be afraid of another African Arab. That's what they're saying here. I'm supposed to be afraid of our brothers here in the African continent, that we're not supposed to have this. We're supposed to be fearful of our African brothers and our African Arab brothers. We're supposed to have fear. So we close our borders and keep trapped up to one another, and we close our borders and we force you to claw and nail to get a visa to come see me in Morocco. That's wrong. But this is what has happened. So anyway, my brothers and sisters, I'm gonna let you guys go here. It's been long and it's kind of late here now in Morocco as well. And thank you for showing up. And I hope that you got something out of this particular chapter on the Aqeedah. And my brothers and sisters that showed up and those in the future, I hope that Subhanahu wa Ta'ala bless you and keep you guys safe, and also that you guys make your dua to ask for the knowledge, and get that knowledge and understand your Aqeedah, my brothers and sisters. This is important to maintain your Islam. You must understand that Aqeedah and stay away from the deviant groups like the Ash'ari. Their Aqeedah is off skew. Stay away from that. It's perverse, and it sends you to the fire as well. So be very careful of that. So my dear brothers and sisters, I'll leave you with the beautiful words of Jinnah. Assalamu alaikum, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.